Before we install the back bindings, we first need to finish cleaning up the binding installation on the top by removing the twill tape and the binding tape. In this spot, it looks like I did get a little bit happy with the tape. Ideally, I'd have maybe a 1/2 inch or 1 inch in between these in here, but I think I was getting a little concerned with having some gaps, so I put some more tape on. If you leave some space, you can get a better visual on what's happening in there, and you can allow for a little more glue squeeze out as well. If you can, leave a little bit more space. Generally, I'm happy with this binding job. I like the way that this looked. Turned out okay. Removal of this tape is a slow process. Don't try to rush it. Rushing things will just get you into trouble and cause more problems that'll take more time to fix. Just take your time, peel it off at that nice low angle. The low angle across the grain will help prevent much of the tear out on the softer spruce. It is super tempting once you get to these last few to just get a little anxious and excited and want to start tearing these off super fast. Just don't lose your focus. Nice and slow, even for the last few. You'll get there, I promise. Was able to get through that with no tear out. I didn't want to jinx myself earlier because it was going so well. Looks good. One thing that I forgot to mention, and actually forgot to do on the top when I was taping the top up, is if you just dog ear your tape before you put it on, it does make it way easier to pull it off. So as you have your tape all in a row, if you want to make it easier, give yourself something to grab onto. Just go along and flip over a little corner, and that will make it much easier to take off when we get to the removal part. Once again, when we are preparing to bind these, I want to get as clean of a line as I can down here on the tail block. So I'm going to line this up, figure out, where the best spot is for this waist. If you kind of roll it back and forth, you'll see there's really a sweet spot where it just wants to sit as well as it's gonna. And then I'm gonna put a center line there. Roll this all the way down. Keep that in place. Give myself a line there, and then I'll do the same on the other one. Do my center line. Okay, now that's set. Snip a little bit off. Same with the other one. Snip it close to that line. And you can use your chisel, or you can bump this up against the sander if you want to. I really prefer the chisel because once we glue this into place and we start coming around the back, we are going to have to do this cut on the heel in real time, which means that we're going to be gluing, and then when we get to here, we're going to have to put it on a block like this, set it there, and chisel it. And if you get to this point and you need a disc or some sort of sander to get your end even, well then you're in trouble because we can't take it off anymore. We have to do this with a chisel, so make sure that you know how to do that with the chisel before we get to that point. Let's tackle this with the same meticulous approach that we used for the top bindings. Take your time. Work slowly to make sure that your edges are crisp and square. The goal here is to create a seamless joint where the binding ends meet to make it virtually invisible. Patience is key here. Don't rush it. Precision is what will make all the difference in achieving the results you're looking for. Yep. All right, so that's set. I've got my tape in place. I've got these done. Now I just need to get my purflings cut correctly and get those mitered. So to do that, I take this, I line it up at the end, squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it, until I get down here, and already cracked. It's good. Just squeeze a little bit more. Now I need to set up this miter. Now these miters I already set up in one of the previous videos when I was getting this end wedge trimmed up, so we are ready to go. But again, we've got this bend in it, right? And I want to straighten that out. So I want to carefully get that bend out of there so that we're a little flatter. Those should be easier to deal with now that they're a little flatter, because we're going to have to bend them in the way that they don't really like to be bent without twisting all up. We are going to approach the back just like we did the top, and with the one exception that we don't have a stepped binding channel now. We are just going with a purfling on the bottom, unless you're not. I am, just so that I can miter these up. But if you didn't do purflings on the side and you just have your end wedge that butts right up against your side material, that's fine too. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna find my miter. That's that. And then here's this one. Double check, make sure that those look good. Yep, okay. Happy with the way that lines up. Then I'll put glue in the binding channel. Now I'm not really gonna do the binding and the purfling separate. They're gonna go in together. So I am just going to get the glue on this whole surface. And just use your finger to smooth that out. Spread the glue. Spreading it out, you can also see if you've got any areas that might be a little thin. All right, that's good. I'm also going to give myself a little glue on the top edge of this purfling. And again, this waist is always an interesting area. Got a lot of forces working against you. That's why I do like to come back at the end with a clamp and really get this to seat better. And this waist pay special attention to the purfling because sometimes it wants to come out of that. One, because of the pressure of the glue behind it, but also just because of that bend. It's difficult to get pressure against that bend. Okay, now this is where we need to come in with the block and get ready to cut this. I'm going to mark my center line. Hopefully I can still see that on the back. Mark that. We'll cut it very close. Almost. Yeah, all right. Happy with that. So now I'm going to finish filling this channel with glue. Add some more glue to this purfling. Now the purfling isn't as critical here because the neck heel will probably stick out almost to the bottom of the guitar, but not quite. I usually put my heel about halfway down the binding, so the purfling will be covered up. So that I'm happy just snapping off. Go along and check and make sure that purfling didn't get stuck out anywhere. And don't get me wrong, we can still scrape it down later. That's not a problem. The bigger problem is if it sticks up too much and we scrape those purflings too thin and suddenly they disappear. We don't want that. That would not be great. Less than ideal. Okay. Next, this side's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to fill this channel and spread it. And once again, I'll stop right around the upper bout to allow myself some flexibility to cut in that binding at the heel block without having too big of a mess. And make sure you get that butt joint with where the bindings come together. Leave some glue on that for sure. Got my miter. Make sure that joint sits together well. Get the miter good, that butt joint good. All right, happy with that. Now I can continue after I get some glue on the top of this. This part is always a little stressful, but man, it is cool to start seeing this really come together. And don't be afraid to get in there and convince that waist to sit like we want it to sit. this around. Mark where that line's gonna go. Not quite. Okay, that's it. Excellent. Okay. Finish putting the glue in the channel. Now I'm just going to push in a couple of the spots. I see that purfling trying to creep out. Now it's time to wrap it. Okay, now we have our 1-inch twill tape available at most fabric stores. So don't freak out on the pressure and put so much on that you're going to break something. Okay, that's probably as far as I'm going to get on the lower bout. Okay, now I'm going to come along on the top, try and find that spot up here, go a little further. There we go. Come over the top. That's good enough for me. And we'll get the clamps on. Just trying to convince them to stay in place. I don't need to put excess force on them. Just a little bit of pressure there. That's good. So I'm going to set a timer for 45 minutes, come back and unwrap this, and then we will get to scraping and cleaning it up. We'll see you in the next video.